Greetings, magical mages and spiritual sages. Welcome to Age of the Mage podcast, and this is episode 46. Tonight, I'd just like to share some feelings that maybe some of you have from time to time. We have our ups and our downs. We have times we just feel like we can take on the whole world. We have other times when we feel like I can't even get out of bed. So we have this range of emotions as humans, and it's part of what makes us so grand and glorious too, is that we can be so expressive and be so responsive to our environments and exchange through the power of emotions with each other. But at the same time, they can be difficult to navigate and sometimes hard to handle and up and down and not always predictable. So I suppose that some of this talk about emotions is coming to me because of the subject tonight. And that is, do you any of you ever feel like you're this little lonely candle trying to stay lit in this great big cavern of darkness? You know, like everything is around you ready to gobble you up at any minute, and you're just bravely holding on to this little wavering light, this small little candle in the midst of darkness. And I think a lot of us might be feeling this from time to time right now, from the things I read and the things I hear from people, and even the feelings I get myself, which leads me back to these emotions that we can feel sometimes very small when it's not true at all. If we were in this frame of mind where we were feeling like we were all alone and we're this little light, this little tiny candle flickering and sputtering along, and everything around us is dark, it could be easy to forget that if somebody shone a big bright light on the whole scene, that we would suddenly get a much better perspective. You know, if you were inside a cave and suddenly the sun shone in and you're like, oh, there's what's going on. There's crystals in this cave and there's water flowing through the cave, but I couldn't see any of this as long as I was the only light in the darkness, because my light only went so far out and I couldn't get the overall picture. I couldn't see the perspective that I needed to see in order to feel the comfort, in order to feel unity with my environment and with my surroundings. So whenever we start feeling separate, and whenever we do start feeling like we're the tiny little candlelight surrounded by darkness, we get we don't receive the right perspective. We're blocked from seeing the big picture. I find that in today's world right now, with so many things going on, there's a lot of upside down energy. There's a lot of things that get accused of being dark that are actually trying to be light. There are things that represent themselves as light that may be leading to dark paths. And I find it's interesting because when we hit sensitive points, when we use trigger words, perhaps in politics or religion, we can suddenly evoke reactions that cause these kinds of accusations to come at us, like, oh, that's such a dark thought. Or, if we happen to be in the middle of a culture that supports our dogma and we say something, we get accolades. Everybody's cheering and saying, you're so light and you're so right. And it becomes, dark and light elements become very relative. They become things that depend on opinion rather than things that develop from natural laws or sources of more reliable truth. And so what happens is we get light and dark attached to narratives. We get these concepts of good and bad, good and evil, light and dark, sometimes attached to opinions, cultural mores, attitudes, our friends, peer pressure. when we might want to take a step back sometimes and say, is that really dark, or is that really light? Is that really bringing love and joy and empowerment into my life as I perceive something of light would? Or is that dampening my spirit? Is that bringing more doubt, more fear? Am I feeling constricted by these thoughts or whatever? And maybe causing you to go into darker places, rather than just jumping at predetermined trigger words, that we may have learned. We may have grown up hearing certain things were bad and certain things were good. And we might find ourselves gravitating to those definitions of things just automatically without even realizing those things may warrant some critical thinking. They may be worth taking a second look at and making some determinations for ourselves. And I find it interesting because as we are moving into the world as a gathering and as a group that is starting to coalesce around very light energies, energies of love and energies that we would like to see sustained and embraced by humanity, ideas of free will, ideas of equality where we can achieve it, and personal sovereignty, respect for each other. At these types of beautiful principles, as we begin to meet each other and make connections and start this great gathering that is taking place, I'm finding it very interesting that the forces of resistance are rising so quickly at the same time. Now, I've talked about this before, and of course, our world depends upon polarities, and we have duality here. And whatever rises up on one end tends to trigger the rising of the opposite upon the other end. And it is a natural law. It is an occurrence that we see. And I'm not surprised by the fact that this happens. But what I am surprised at is how quickly and how responsive the invisible networks seem to be operating, right? How fast they're operating right now. In days past, if I would do something or I would have an experience, sometimes it was many days or months before I could see the opposite start to rise up. And there was this lapse. There was not always immediate, quick feedback. But as I think about our world and the energy that we're moving into, and this very different kind of higher frequency associated with maybe the concept of 5D, fifth dimension energies, I see this speeding up. I see cause and effect just coming right on top of each other. I see this gap closing, this time gap that used to occur between one incident and a related opposite incident happening or showing itself. This gap is just disappearing. I can even find myself projecting a thought, not even cementing that thought in any kind of way, like through a post or a blog or a video, but literally just being surrounded by the thought, preparing to share it, and get adverse reactions to that very thought showing up quickly in my 3D life. And so this has me thinking about the overall types of energy and the systems that we're moving into that might be quite different from those we're accustomed to, and will present these different kinds of challenges. We can get frustrated when we're trying to manifest something we want and we feel we need, and there is that gap of time between our wish for it and its appearance. And this can be a source of frustration for many of us. But what if that gap just shrinks? What if we saw our focused intentions bringing about these manifestations very quickly? We might reconsider that it may not be such a gift as we perceive, because we are not always disciplined enough to focus and intend things that would truly be healthy for us or good for us or good for others. And if this gap were to disappear between our wish for something and it coming to pass, it's a safeguard in a way, because it forces us to take the time to align with our desire. And it this gap, we have to fit into it before it can manifest on the other side. And so this process of manifestation that sometimes requires time between the desire and the manifestation of that desire is actually can be a good thing for all of us. It provides a way to ease into the new change, into the alchemy that we have asked for in some kind of magical way, whether it's through a visualization or a prayer or a ritual. We get this kind of easing into it by having this part of reality work with us and require a true alignment before manifestation can happen. Now, if our realities are changing, if we're finding that even the laws that govern, some of the laws that govern our reality are either changing, or maybe they've been the same way all along, but they're morphing into different types of parameters, which causes us to view reality in a different way, this can be a shock to our system, because all of a sudden things like those protective gaps, they may shorten. They may not be so, they may not give us enough time to adjust, even to things we think we want, let alone those things we do not want. Reality may become more fluid with less boundaries and less effort. It may take less effort to change our realities. They may change according to our thoughts very quickly now. And so let's go back to emotions. This is all going to circle back around. It's one of those rabbit hole experiences. It's a labyrinth. This podcast is a bit of a labyrinth. We're going to circle back around to emotion, because we know that emotion precedes desires, and those precede our intentions, and intentions precede our taking control of intentions and focusing them, the focus. And that's the process of magic. That's the process of manifestation magic, or alchemy, change magic. So we start with this emotion. Now, what if again, this reality that we've been used to, this gap that protects us, it's kind of a buffer between our own worst enemy, ourselves sometimes, and also a buffer from others that might harm us through things they wish for in a manifestation way. What if that whole buffering system were to change? What if it becomes one of the symptoms, one of the effects of our world shifting into perhaps a less density, but definitely into a higher dimension? Then it might become more important to take a look at our emotions and watch how we project them and see if we can become friends with them and learn how to harness them. We don't want our emotions to disappear. No, they guide us towards our desires and our purpose and our destiny. So we want our emotions intact and we want them healthy. But if the rules of reality are beginning to change, we may, as magicians, as spiritual leaders, as those who will mentor others in the ways of the new world and of the new earth and of the new dimensions, we will have to learn these things first so that we can help to train others and illuminate others on this path. So we may need to take a look at our emotions and determine how reactive are we and how accurate are we. In other words, can we say that our emotions are being triggered by habit or by an illusion, some sort of narrative, versus something far more steadfast and true? This is going to be important. We ourselves have to step out of triggers. we need to do this as leaders in this upcoming world. We're going to need to distance ourselves from the types of triggers that rob us of our ability to guide our own emotions and to use critical thinking in hand with emotions. It's one thing to get angry at someone because they're using a word you don't like and let your emotions just go all out of control over this, as opposed to getting angry at someone whose consistent actions you don't like and you are able to see they're bringing pain to others. And it's not a trigger, it's an observation. You have stepped back, you've allowed yourself to actually observe someone with more depth and with a better judgment, and you've seen consistency, and all these things can go together to create a better, more perceptive picture. And then you can say, I don't like that. You know, you can have a raw emotion come up because what you see, what you're observing, you don't like. Personally, it is not in sync with things you value. That's very different than reacting so strongly to simply a trigger word or to an organization or something that someone has told you is bad without doing your own research. It's going to become important because of the new energies we'll be working with. In our past, I think we could get by with we didn't need quite as much perfection in our discernment because reality had our gaps and our buffers built in for us. And we could go down a certain path for quite some time and not necessarily affect our own lives or lives of others by misjudging that path. We had time. We had time to turn around. We had a kind of reality with rules set up that were delayed and allowed us to walk a while before we needed to do any more examinations and see what path we were really on. But this may not be the case. Energies seem to be speeding up. The boundaries of realities seem to be much more permeable. The concept that realities may overlay each other and exist simultaneously, even when they're at complete odds. We're even seeing this happen in our world today. And when we put this into not just individual terms, but into collectives, imagine the power of a collective using group emotion as a result of a trigger, and just having the power to affect reality very strongly based on an emotion that is not based on, rather, a truth. That's based on a narrative, that's based on a inherited bias. Well, if we are moving into a reality that makes things happen just immediately or quickly, we could see a lot of effects from such collective reactions that up until now have taken a decent amount of time to come about, and that has given the other side, that has given the polarity a time to get ready to react and to counterbalance the first thing. Now, if we're moving into the kind of energy systems that allow for much faster cause and effect, much faster action reaction, with far less buffering zone between and far less gaps of time, we are going to have to adjust very quickly how to avoid the kinds of problems that could come from such reactions that are not tethered to some deep intuitive perception and sensitivity, discernment, and critical thinking. As I have shared so many messages with all of you, I have found that just some terms upset, not you, dear audience, but those who might see one of our titles to one of our sessions we're sharing with each other, one of the podcasts. They might just see that title in passing. And without knowing anything about our true purpose and quest to help humanity and help our world with pure intentions of light and love driving us and our desires to help, just completely misjudge the whole purpose, behind the gathering, or the purpose behind my reason to share my ideas with you, and the purpose of the podcast, the purpose of building an etheric connected network of light, all based on a very fast judgment, a very quick reaction to a word or a phrase that they feel is wrong somehow. Well, this has always happened. This has always been the case. So I'm only speaking about it because of my concern as I'm watching connections happen more and more quickly in our new energy fields that are coming up for us to access and use. In that particular, it's for that reason I'm concerned. Because we need each other. This leads me to this thought of how badly we do need each other. If it is so easy and so fast, if reactions are going to start happening faster and faster, and if the light attracts darkness and darkness attracts light to it, and so on and so forth, faster and faster, without these gaps, without these buffers, how long can we stand as little candles alone in these big dark caves? It seems to me that I don't think we are alone, for one thing. I think that's wrong. But in our perceptions, we can feel as if we're alone. And if we try to step out with our truth and our light, and the repercussions for that are so fast and so swift based on new energy systems taking hold, it could be rather challenging to maintain our light that we need, and we need to have for ourselves, and the light that we came to share with the entire world. And one of our best defenses, I think, there's many innumerable things we can do. We've discussed some already in past podcasts, and we're going to go on to discuss all kinds of ways to live in these new energies and thrive in what we're going to be seeing coming into our future. But one of the primary ways that I see us surviving the backlashes that could come faster and more furious than ever before is to be together. Because when you have a one candle who sees, oh, there's another candle over there. Look, just a few inches away from me is another candle. And look, I can see farther now because my light, the radius of my light extends over that, just that few inches. And then that candle's light extends a few more inches. And all of a sudden, I can see double the distance that I was able to see when I was only alone as one little candle. And oh, look, there's a third candle appearing. Now I can see 3 times more than I saw before. Our connectivity is going to be one of our strongest assets, one of our strengths, one of our best defenses against the backlash that could very well come more quickly and more harshly than many of us are accustomed to. If we truly are in kind of a battle to see where humanity will go, if we truly are in a phase that is attempting to change almost everything about our world that we were used to into a new type of existence, there will be forces fighting each other to the likes of which we've never seen, because there's a resistance to the kind of change that we're approaching. We're on the cusp of so much. And there are separate little pockets of resistance at very small individual levels. And then there's great big walls and waves of resistance at larger levels. And if we compound these opposing forces with the idea that the etheric nature of our reality is also changing very quickly under the pressure of this new growth and new evolution and emergence that we're going through into this new birth, so to speak. Well, that just complicates everything even more, because it's as if the rules that we're used to playing with are also turned upside down. Right now we're dealing with upside down narratives, upside down definitions, upside down attacks, it's just everywhere, isn't it? We're all dealing with it. Magical people, mystics, those that have walked outside the box of their own culture, no matter what culture that may be, if they have been outliers, if you have had experiences that do not fit inside of an established system already, we know what it's like to feel the backlash, because that we're symbols of this change. We're symbols of people having to say, I may have to change my whole framework. I may lose my identity in this process. I don't know if I can go through it. I'm scared. It feels like dying. I think I'll just hang on to the status quo and stay right where I am. And if I could just blame that person over there for everything going wrong, that's going to be my approach to this, because I don't think I can face the change. So as symbols of change, that magical people have always been. We have always been under the microscope. We have always been the convenient scapegoat. We've always been the thing that is causing the stuff that other people don't want to look at. We may have to face this again, all over again. We are all going to have to determine for ourselves how we're going to do this. Personally, I take great comfort from those of you that I get to communicate with, from those of you I have met, either through online conversations, in-person meetings, letters, texts, messaging. You are becoming very quickly my network of strength. You are becoming the candle next to me, and the candle next to that, and the candle next to that one, so that I don't have to feel alone or as alone as I sometimes do. And I know that if you're hearing this, and if you have come this far into the podcast, almost to the end, you are experiencing something similar to this. You are carrying a load. You are carrying a burden of truth or of knowledge that is difficult to maintain in a solitary way, that's difficult to hold on to alone. And you may feel alone. I don't believe any of us are alone. Deep down, I know we're not. But there are days when we feel that way, aren't there? The more we build a network with each other, the more we have another person to reach out to on those days to remind us that we are not alone at all. The better our defenses will be against the types of forces that are in resistance to what we have to offer. Our light, our truth, and our commitment to the vibration of love, the true vibrations that underlie divine love and light and truth. That's my message for today. And it's a bit meandering, I know. I just feel as though I'm talking to you. I'm sharing this deep feeling I'm going through with you. And so I'm not sure that this podcast has some kind of straight arrow direct message. If you're hearing this, I hope that you can look inside the words I've shared, inside the labyrinth we've walked together today, and see if any part of it feels familiar. If it does, I invite you to become part of my network of candles. And I thank you for listening. I will be back soon, and I will say goodbye for now.